afternoon. How are you this fine May afternoon? My name's Christine, and it is my joy to welcome you to this Google Digital Garage training session. And today we're going to be talking about social media strategy. All right, so what do you need to know? Well, how about I introduce myself a little more before we get going? So as I say, my name's Christine, and I'm one of the trainers for Google's free skills training program, the Google Digital Garage. I've been working on the program pretty much since it started, all the way back in 2017. In my rest of my life, I'm a marketeer, and I've been working with small businesses, large businesses, charities, all kinds of organizations to help them improve their digital skills. We don't do any of these things on our own. And alongside me today, I've got the lovely Tessa. Now, Tessa is also one of our Google Digital Garage coaches, and her role today is to be our moderator. Some of you have already met Tessa. She is in the chat right now, has been since just before I started speaking, and she is there to help, to guide, to answer questions. She'll be sending you some useful links, and if she thinks of some extra little detail that would be great for you to hear, she's going to pop that in the chat as well. So don't be shy. Pop into that chat and have a little word with her. In order to use the chat, you're going to need to be signed into your YouTube account. If you're not signed in at the moment, pop up to the right there, sign up or sign in using the icon. And by the time you've done that, it won't take you more than a moment. You'll be back with us and ready to chat live with Tessa. Any trouble viewing the webinar at any point, best thing to do is just refresh your page. A little bit of turn it off and turn it on seems to help with that. What else do we need to know? So you can ask your questions anytime in the chat. Also, there'll be opportunities if I ask you a question, you can answer me there as well. Tessa will pass all that on to me. But what you might like to know as well is that we'll pause every so often through the session and answer some of those questions together. Tessa will choose some of those questions that she thinks would be great for the whole group to hear the answer to, and we'll pause as we go through and do a little bit of live Q&A. The questions will have to be, or the answers she gives will have to be relevant to social media strategy. But you can always head over back to our website if you want to know any more. That's also where to go to see any more of our Google Digital Garage virtual training, because we do have a much broader offering of courses. As I say, check out the schedule of that on our website. If you check out the description below, it'll link you through to the website, but it's probably how you found me here this afternoon. So you might already have been there. Okay, then let's take a look. What are we going to be having a look at today? So we're talking about social media, but in particular, how you might use social media to grow your business. So we're going to think about the ways that people could use their social media in order to start a business, grow a business, find new customers, all those wonderful things that you might want to do. We will also then have a look at how you might go about building that social media strategy. And then we've got some tips and a few tools for you that are going to help with some best practices for social media as well. So we've got a really packed session for you today. Before we jump into all that content, I just wanted to highlight, now I can see from today, just checking out the chat, that we have got people joining us from all over the world, and you are so welcome to us. We've got London, Dubai, Norway, South Africa. I think I saw, where else did I see? Barcelona, more from Dubai, loads of people from all over the world, and it is amazing to have you with us. Just turn your ears off for a moment, though, if you're not based in the UK, because at the moment we have an offer that complements what we're doing with our webinars. And if you're based here in the UK and you're working for a small business or a startup, or you've got that seed of a business idea, or maybe you're working for a charity. If you're based here in the UK, you can sign up for a free one-to-one mentoring session from Google. As I say, the sessions are completely free, and we can help you one-to-one on a range of your digital skills, whether that's support building your strategy, taking a look at, we'll take a look at some things like social media calendars and things as we go through. Whatever it is, you need help with your digital business, then we would love to have a conversation with that about you. Okay, everybody else, rest of the world back in the room. And we're going to take a look now at how social media could help your business to grow. And the reason that businesses are interested in getting involved in social media and using social media to grow their business is basically because of customers. Customer behavior. Customer behavior has changed. Human behavior is changing, and it's all due to the rise of the internet and being able to connect with people instantly around the globe. We do it in our social lives, and we kind of expect it in our business lives as well. So basically, most businesses have a decent section of their customer base already using social media. There are 44 million active social media users in the UK and roughly spending about 2 hours. Now, if we're in the room together, I'd at this point get a quick show of hands. And some of you in the room would think 2 whole hours on social media. How does anybody spend that long on it? And others of you in the room would say only 2 hours. So why don't you let us know? Let us know what you think about that idea of 2 hours being spent on social media a day. When we're thinking about social media, we're thinking about things like Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and Snapchat and TikTok and all the other platforms out there. We're also thinking about YouTube. And it's really interesting, actually, for a lot of people, when we do say that YouTube is a social media platform, some of those, how do you spend 2 hours, goes to, oh, only 2 hours. Because it's for different people, different platforms are really engaging. We also have LinkedIn, Pinterest, all kinds of different platforms out there for different people. WhatsApp, maybe some people think that's a social media platform as well. So lots and lots of different platforms out there. Have a think about your usage, about how your usage it might have changed over the last few years. When we're trying to do some marketing for our businesses, what we're trying to do is really get under the skin of what our customers are up to, and then seeing how we can match and be found in the places that they might be looking for us. Okay, so your customers are living their lives on social media. Even if they're not posting, loads of them are consuming social media. A lot of us would go to social media, do searches on social media to see what's going on locally, to see what's going on in the world before we would go to a recognized news outlet. So because our customers are there, it means there's great business uses if you can get them right. Lots of businesses are using social media and their social media activity to actually generate sales. Let's face it, it's what most businesses need to do at some point or other. So they can reach new audiences with up to 84% of the UK population on some social media platform. It makes it a really good place to connect with new customers. Later, we'll talk about the art of selecting the platform for the person, and depending on what your objectives are. There's no one right platform. There's no one best platform. There's lots of factors that we've got to consider into it. But you can reach out to those new audiences. You can use them to connect with customers, not just new customers, but connect with customers in new ways, creating new opportunities for yourself, for your business. You can target people from within a local geography, or you can target people across the globe based on a common shared interest. Lots of different ways you can look at people by, when I first started with marketing, we only really had the very bare bones, a few basic demographic details to use to try and target our customers, try and segment our audiences. How old were they? Were they male or female? Roughly where did they live? What kind of job they did? We still have all of that stuff, but now we can really get deeper under the skin and look at interests and behaviors and propensities to buy certain things. It's not just about having the money and having a salary that would allow you to buy what we've got to sell. It's about whether you value the same things. And we can really start to target those values-based and behavioral-based factors that make so many people different from each other, even if the demographics are the same. And it's all about building relationships, building networks, connecting genuinely and authentically with the right kinds of people. You might want to find influencers around your subject. You might want to become an influencer around your subject. Showcase your knowledge. There's lots of ways that by actually reducing the people you're trying to speak to, you can look to increase your success, which will ultimately, if that's your target, ultimately can lead to increasing of sales. While you're doing all that, you can use the fact that customers are hanging out on social media and expect to be able to get answers on social media to really raise your customer service, to add value to your brand, to showcase who you are, what's special about you. We talked about those values. You can use those values and sharing of common values to, have conversations with people who might be interested in what you've got to say, and genuine, in-depth personal conversations with people. You can use that to show a different side to your business. You don't have to always be, a particularly cold and distant brand. You can show behind the scenes. You can show your humanity, your personality, show what's going on in your world, and connect with people who share your values and who would trust the kinds of people that you are. And in doing so, you can really look to find that community, to either build a community or join in with the community, to really feel like you gotta say, being sociable on social media is an absolute key to what lots of businesses are trying to do. When it comes to marketing, there are kind of a ripple of effect beyond just making the occasional post on a social media platform. We mentioned getting noticed on search. Of course, we're talking from Google, we are obsessed with search. We're thinking about search and being found all the time. And what quite often happens is if you do a search on a search engine, such as Google, actually some of the first results that come up, especially around those breaking news and news items, might not be the official published sources. It might be those on the ground social comments, social media comments. And the reason for that, very brief potted reason, is that social media sites are crawled almost constantly they're indexed all the time because because they link to lots of places, because there's constantly updating, then they're being constantly searched, indexed for search. So things that you could post on your own website, and then you might have to wait weeks for it to be indexed, and then longer for it to be found. Because the social media sites have such size and reach and authority, things that you post on there can be found a lot quicker by a much wider audience than if they were just to be posted on your own website. So you can also use that knowledge and use that interest to actually then think, okay, well, maybe my strategy might be to bring people in to my website. I'm going to be found over here and find a way to bring them over here to me. You might use social media to learn to improve your marketing, to learn more about your customers, you can run experiments, do more people engage with this kind of content or that kind of content? What's going on behind the scenes? All social media platforms give you data. If they're looking to, ultimately lots of social media platforms want you to advertise them with them. So they're going to give you the information, the data you need to help you make that decision as to whether it's right or not for you to advertise with them. So looking at that data, looking at those insights can really help you to learn much more about your customers' wants, their needs, their preferences, what they like to engage with, what turns them off again. And of course, you can keep an eye on other people as well. You can see what your competitors are up to. You can learn what seemed to work, and not just for the same sort of business that sells the same sort of thing in the same sort of town. You can learn from the absolute best across the globe. You can see what they're up to, but you can also see what works for the kinds of people who are serving the same kind of audience. If you're in financial services, there might be somebody who's serving the same section of the audience as you, who's a solicitor. Accountants and solicitors, maybe there's some commonality. You can learn from what they're doing and use that to inform what you do. Okay, so it's a fantastic way to really learn more about the people that you might be trying to reach. And that's what marketing all boils down to at the end of the day. So when you're setting out at this point, the kinds of questions, we'll talk about data as we go, but data is really, really important. And it's things like, are those posts on social media bringing people to my website? Do I want to run an experiment to see if I can improve that happening? What do people like? There's no hard and fast answers to any of this. And social media platforms do kind of change a lot. So if somebody says you must post at this time with this kind of content, they don't know. They probably don't know your customers as well as you do. And there's no one right answer to any of these questions. So the kinds of, finding out for yourself, setting yourself challenges and experiments. What kind of updates should I post? Well, what information have you got to give? When are you going to post it? How are you going to do it? The only way is to test it and try it and see what works for you. Things like the time and who the real people are. Your analytics will help you with all of those things. If you're already running some social media, and you haven't looked at your analytics, pop that down on your to-do list from today to make sure you start learning as much as you can. As I say, if you've got that history to learn on, that's fantastic, because you can jumpstart your improvements. But when you're looking at anything in marketing at all, but social media in particular, it's about running experiments. It's about trying to improve as you go. Few things to remember. We have a super short attention span. People bemoan the fact all the time that attention spans are getting shorter and shorter. People think, like a bit of a goldfish. It's estimated that we have an 8-second attention span, but it decreases rapidly on social media. Imagine that you have the time it takes to get from the thumb, scrolls the screen from the bottom to the top, and then off you go. You have to grab the attention in that time. That's what we mean by short attention. So the content you create has to be good enough to target the people you're trying to reach in those split seconds, really grab their attention. There's tons of competition out there. Lots of brands are competing for attention. Lots of people are trying to do this thing. So it's not just about posting some random things and hoping some people come. It's about having a strategy, really working hard to stand out, to know what your customers want better than anybody else does. In the early days, people thought they would go viral, and some businesses did just by having great content and just by posting it up there. Fortunately, that doesn't happen so much anymore. It's a bit of a misconception that social media is free and it's a free way to grow your audience, because even if you're not running ads, and all of the big platforms are set up to make that super easy for you, but even if you're not directly spending on ads, your time's not free. What are you, what you choose to spend your business time on? You could be out doing other things. Whatever it is that your job is, most small businesses don't have the luxury of a full-time social media manager. So lots of us are having to do it as part of the roles we take. So it has a cost, because it's the cost of what you're not doing when you're doing it. So it's not always free, but once it's there, it stays there. So make sure you're really careful about just, taking a bit of time. I always say to people, public advisory notice, don't drink and tweet. Make sure that you're keeping, you set yourself some processes, and we'll talk about these sorts of things as we go through, to make sure that you are being represented in the absolute best possible way whenever you are posting on socials. Okay then, so let's take a little bit of a look. Right, I can see from Tessa that, we've got some questions coming in as we go. But what she's suggesting is that she's going to keep on answering the questions in the chat for us. Do keep getting your questions in, because she knows that we have a lot to get through, and that the question time that we have together might be, I think some of the things we're going to start mentioning over the next two sections might really start sparking some of those questionings in your brain. So do get them in if you think of that, because we're now going to jump into really practically how on earth are you going to make the most of this social media opportunity. And we're going to think about strategies and planning. And remember, through all of this, there is no one best way, no one best answer. But what we can give you is a 5-step strategy towards creating that social media plan for yourself. Those of you who have joined us for the digital marketing strategy webinar, you'll see that it's actually quite similar, as you would expect. If you are running any other kind of marketing, think of how your social media fits into your overall marketing plan. What I wouldn't want, although we do go into quite a lot of depth here with social media just because of how important it is for so many businesses, don't forget to really plug this into your overall marketing strategy, which in turn should plug into your overall business strategy to make sure that we are getting the best possible outcomes. But in terms of your social media, what we're thinking about is the audience, who the people are. Then we want to think about your business, what you want to achieve. And it's only when you've thought about the audience and what the business needs to achieve that we then start to think about picking a social platform. Once you've picked, and I would suggest social platforms, we'll talk about it, a small number of platforms. Just because we talk about lots of different platforms on today's session, I don't want you to think that you have to be on every single platform. In fact, I think the opposite. You need to be on fewer platforms in order to make your message stronger. And what's your message going to be? We'll talk a little bit then about tone of voice, about how you present yourself. We go a lot more into that actually on our webinar called Writing for Social Media. That goes really nicely with today's session. So if you haven't already, it's worth signing up. Go ahead back to our website and sign up for that one too. And we will finish off our 5-step plan with a little bit of a look at the data and trying to determine what success might look like for you and for your business. All right then, so step 1, your audience, the people you are trying to reach. All right, so we've already started to mention that we're so lucky in this section of time in that as marketeers, as businesses, we don't just have to think about those boring basic demographic details. We don't even really have to be restricted by geographic details. So when you're thinking about the people who might connect with you, with your product, with your service, with your brand, you can really start to think about who they are fundamentally. Lots of different people have different values, different needs, So what is it about a certain section of the population that means they might be interested in what it is that you've got to say? All right. So you want to get under the skin of who these people are. And really important, what's important to them, what influences them, who influences them, where do they go to get their information? And falling out of that, what kind of social media platforms do they actually use? If you ever meet your customers, then that's fantastic, because these are the kinds of questions that somebody who's meeting their customers day in, day out will start to almost instinctively know the answers to. And while that's brilliant, it's a good place to start. What I want you to think of is look for then analytical sources, look for data sources that can help you to challenge those assumptions that you've made. You might think that your audience is females in their 30s who like Minecraft. Okay, how are you going to prove those things? Remember, there's no right answers to any of this. There's no universal answers. All right. So think about then looking at your data, looking at, talking to people, but then following it up with, looking for that commonality. What can you see that will help you in future to identify that audience? So we've mentioned it already, but speaking to real people, identifying their needs and their interests, trying to find out if there are any pain points that you're a great solution for. One thing I really love to do is think about the questions that people ask that you're a great answer to. And the longer and more detailed the questions that you can come up with, and the more detailed your answers can be, actually, the better. Because that then later on will lead on to these great content ideas. How can you show that you're a great answer to those questions? So for those people, when they're looking for the need that you fulfill, what are their needs? And think of it in their language, all right? And wherever possible, I've worked with so many businesses, and I'll say to you, right, who is your audience? Who are you trying to reach? And they will say, everyone. Anyone can buy my product. Everyone could use my service. And whereas that might be true, it's not very helpful, especially for a small business, to try and target everyone. If you think about going back to food, as I always do, imagine that you had some bread and you were to spread it with butter. If you have too much bread and spread the butter too thinly, it's not very tasty. It's not very satisfying. Whereas a smaller amount of bread with the same amount of butter, the same amount of resource spread all over it is going to be super tasty. So it's all about narrowing in and really concentrating your effort on smaller groups of like-minded people. All right. We talk about this quite a lot in terms of creating segments, creating what we call pen portraits of people within our Writing for Social Media webinar. So if you want to know more about audience definitions, do join us for that one. But use the data to help you to identify, for instance, in all of your customers, who are the most likely to buy from you, or who are the most likely to spend more money. You might find that you have lots of people who engage with you and are interested in what you've got to say, but actually there's a subset of those people who actually go on to buy. And when you're looking to create a lookalike audience, if you can focus your time on the ones who are likely to spend rather than just the ones who are likely to engage, then that might be really useful to you as well. And obviously, we've mentioned data sources that might exist. You can actually start to create your own qualitative data by having online surveys. You can really quantitate that data by asking people the questions and getting those answers coming on in. That could be as simple as using a Google form to create, or a SurveyMonkey to create those surveys to get that data. I've mentioned already that most social media platforms have analytics already built in, especially if you've got a business account. You might not have realized they're there, but they might have been collecting data for the last couple of years for you. So we've got different things. And what happens is that the same data is often presented in different ways. The first example here, we've actually got, this is from Google Analytics, and you can see a male, for this particular website, a male-female split, and also an age range of the particular site, of the particular visitors that are coming to the site. Okay. Facebook does something similar as well, but here they've presented it slightly differently. They've still got the age split and the female and male split, but they've split those out and put them in a bar graph, top and bottom. You can also see grayed out in there is the dark blue colours are the Facebook's the demographics of this particular Facebook page, and the grey behind that is actually the standard distributions of the overall population of Facebook users. So you can see here they have a significantly higher portion of, I think that's 35 to 44-year-olds than the general Facebook population. What does that tell you? Whereas if you're matching the general Facebook population, that might tell you that you have a fairly universal offering. I love this one from Twitter. This is an engagement graph, it's showing us when our customers are engaging. And you can see it's over time, 31 data points, and it goes up and down. And I can tell you it goes down 1, 2, 3, 4 times in the 31 days. It goes down for 2 days and it stays up for 5 days. What might that be telling us? And it could be telling us that people are only interested in what we've got to say over a weekend. But if you flip that over, it might be telling us that we're not posting anything at the weekend. So my first experiment might be to see if I were to start posting at the weekend, I could get 2 bonus days for free of extra engagement, simply by slightly changing the way I work. So it's really about understanding what's going on in the customers' lives, questioning what the data is telling us, and not just assuming. As I say, I could have assumed that, well, people are only interested in me 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. Maybe I need to see whether posting on that Saturday and Sunday, what effect that has. And nobody knows the answer until they give it a go. So next thing we're going to think about is you as a business, okay? And what do you as a business need to achieve? And how might social media help that? So, for instance, your goal might be to give better customer service. That's a very different business goal, and you'd approach it differently than if you were trying to generate sales, or if you were trying to connect with influencers. All of these are very valid business goals that social media can absolutely help with. But it's all about working out what your goals are. So think about your business goals and then how social media can support that too. So think about, how are you going to use your channels? What are you actually trying to achieve? You might even find that different channels have, different objectives towards them. You might be using YouTube to inform people, but you might have a feedback connection on something like Twitter, where people go to talk about businesses and brands. You might be wanting to connect with brand awareness. You might find later on that you're going to do that through, say, your Facebook channel or something. So there's different reasons for using the different tools, which is why we always think of what our business needs to achieve before we go about selecting those platforms. So let's take a couple of moments and just think about, if you were to go about setting one social media goal to support your business, whether that's growing awareness, whether that's selling some things, whether that's reaching out to influencers. And we're going to talk about, just for a second, the Double Diamond framework. It's a common problem-solving framework, and it's all about really getting beneath the skin of that goal. Okay, so first of all, your first D is D for discover. All right, so what is the goal? What's it all about? How is that going to help your business? All right, then the next step is to define. So go a bit deeper. Are there any things that could get in the way? What are the barriers to you achieving your goal? The barriers could be your skills. The barriers could be the time, the resources. But just not knowing what to do. How am I going to learn? So when you come to develop it, it's okay. I might need to create a social media channel. I might need to learn to make content. I need to find somebody who can, help me do these things. And your fourth D of deliver is then, how are you going to mitigate for any issues you've got? I don't have the skills. I'm going to do some courses. I'm going to skill myself up. I don't have the platform yet. I'm going to have to create some brand assets and come up with some content ideas. Okay. So whatever your social media goals are, it's really worth really breaking them down and keep going back to, how is this going to help my business? How is it going to help me sell more things? How is it going to help me raise brand awareness? How is it going to help me give better customer service? Whatever those business goals are, make sure your social media activity is really supporting those things. So we know what we want to achieve as a business, and we know who we want to achieve it with, our audience. That's when we come on to step 3. And it's there that we start to choose the channels. And it's not just about, the business goals and the audience. So when we bring the channels into play, we've obviously got so many channels potentially out there. One of the real questions to ask yourself is, where would my customers expect to see a business like mine? And I say that because your customers, your potential customers, your audience, are all people, okay? And I think about my own personal internet. I've got probably presences 4, 5, 6 different social media platforms. And as I say, for me, social media wise, YouTube might be about entertainment for me. It might be about learning of things, how-tos on YouTube. I might use Facebook to catch up with what's going on locally. Something like Twitter to see what's going on in the world with the news or different selective technical things I follow. I might use Instagram to get inspiration, or Pinterest to get inspiration for beautiful things. I might use LinkedIn from a business point of view. So lots of different platforms, and the same person can have a presence on all the platforms. So it's not just about having a presence, it's about expecting to see a business like yours. So each channel requires time and money, potentially money, definitely time, definitely resource, definitely brain power, and potentially money to be spent on it in order to get good results. So don't try and spread yourself too thin. It's not all free. It's worth concentrating, doing it well. If you're going to do it well. So don't be on every platform just for the sake of being on platforms. And just because you can post the same thing across different platforms, don't be tempted into having lots of platforms and thinking you're going to do it that way. Okay. So think about what's the most appropriate way for your audience to find you. And I love that. Start with one. Try it, test it. Do more of what does work and less of what doesn't work. Okay. And it's really important that, as I say, we don't do that thing where we just post on lots of different channels, because different channels need different strategies. And if the same person is looking on the different channels for different things, you want to make sure you're matching what they would expect to see. So a few different platforms we've moved. The minute we pop up details about a particular platform, the new platforms spring up and things change. But Twitter's great for quick-fire conversations, and it's really good. There are still significant communities, quite often around technical aspects or special interests around on Twitter. It's a place you can go and really show credibility. It's also really good for PR. Lots and lots of journalist-type people, and when they're looking for stories, articles to write, they might be looking on Twitter as one of the places they go to connect with brands, to find inspiration, to learn more. So it's absolutely possible to use Twitter to connect with influential journalists within your industry. Okay. You can ask questions, you can run polls, whatever you're doing, engagement is really key. Don't just keep shouting out and posting. And this applies to all platforms, really. Be sociable, join in. It's not all about telling people your sales message. They'll turn off from that very quickly. But genuinely being useful, answering questions, being authentic, that's where you're going to win on things like Twitter. Facebook is all about local. It's all about personal. Okay. If, things like if you had a local restaurant, local bar, local kids activity club, whatever it is, a lot of us expect to see a Facebook page for those local things. It's really helpful. Local plumbers, lots of people posting on local groups saying, can anybody recommend a plumber with availability for this Wednesday? You can actually directly find work within those local community groups. It's a very visual channel. So in terms of, showcasing great video, great imagery, really making it that idea that a picture tells 1,000 words, something especially about the video is Facebook much prefers it, as do all platforms really, when you host your videos natively on their channel rather than linking out to other places. Same with web links for a lot of platforms. We're saying we want to bring people to our website, but actually a lot of platforms don't want you to link off to their website because they want, once you're in their ecosystem, they want to keep the traffic there. So think about what you can host natively on pretty much any platform, really. You can change the call to action buttons, which is, so here where it says create a page, that button is a CTA, is a call to action. The button is telling you what to do. So whether that was shop here, buy now, visit us, book a table, get a quote, you can change what that button says on your Facebook to tell people what you want them to do. It's a really strong way of actually getting people to take that action. Instagram, incredibly visual. You can use your storyboard, but you can also use things like stories. So as well as your permanent imagery, which has to be top-notch, beautiful quality, if you've got great imagery, those images can stay on your homepage forever. You've also got stories. Loads of people sit and watch stories. So having a few stories a week might help you to get in front of people who are following you and really remind them of who you are. Be consistent with your branding. Come up with your house style, come up with your look and feel, which we'll talk about a little bit later as well. And it says here, go easy on hashtags. That's true again of lots of platforms. Make sure you write for the human as well as for the algorithm. The hashtag used to be, when platforms like Twitter and Instagram first started up, they were just big databases. And the little hash sign was how you told the database what that particular post was all about, tagging it. We don't have to do that so much now because the search technology is so much more advanced. If you put a hashtag on that isn't relevant to your content, it knows, it will work that out very, very quickly. So if you're going to use hashtags, make sure they're relevant and only use a few that are super relevant. Don't just churn the same hashtags every single time. Make sure for each post you imagine how that might be used. If I'm going to follow a hashtag, look at a hashtag, search for something, I only want to see a feed of things that are relevant to it. So be really disciplined with your hashtagging and with your content writing and with your caption writing. Don't be lazy and just plonk any old thing there. Really think about, remember we said we might be found in search this way. How are you going to do that? And I've mentioned LinkedIn a little bit already. You can host a brand page on LinkedIn. You can post content. You can connect with people who might be in those buying stages, who are buying for work. You might be able to identify whole decision-making units. I worked with a firm that they were a locksmith, but they did big corporate, so hospitals and schools and those, they did the locks and the locking systems for all of that kind of business. They went into LinkedIn and identified the site managers, the budget holders, the people who were actually, the caretakers, the contacts they needed to have, that so they could surround all the relevant people with their information, the information they might need. Have an authoritative voice. Think about, with LinkedIn, you can host longer form content. In the old days, we might have used white papers. LinkedIn can host that kind of in-depth industry information, which can really showcase your authority. And again, is highly searchable. YouTube, we've mentioned a couple of times. It's the second biggest search engine in the world. It's the world's most popular video sharing site. And you can learn anything, you can show anything, you can find anything on YouTube. We do actually have a couple of webinars dedicated directly to creating for YouTube and really making that a marketing success. So do think about joining it. And if you want to learn about YouTube, a really good place to go as well is the Creator Academy. So YouTube's Creator Academy, which is where YouTubers share all of their tips and tricks for using the platform as well. All right, so we've had to think about choosing a platform. We've thought about who we're trying to reach and what we want to reach them for. It's then a good idea to kind of set yourself your own style guide, your own toolkit, your own rule kit about how you're going to communicate on social media. We think of this as our social voice, but voice isn't just the words we use. Voice is the way we use them. Voice is the images we use. Voice is our brand elements, our logo, our colours, our fonts, the border we put on. Is the logo going to be consistent on every single image? Are we going to use a set filter on our images to make sure that things are consistent? When you start out, you probably think this might be a bit extra work that you don't really need to do because you know all about what you're doing. And especially today, when you're so fired up, hopefully, by social media by the end of the session. But actually, if you come up with your do's and don'ts while that is still fresh in your mind, then in 3 months' time, 6 months' time, maybe it's fallen into your day-to-day and it's helpful to have that do's and don'ts. Maybe you recruit somebody else to help you, or you decide to use an agency to help with some of that content creation. Having your house style, your do's and don'ts, your brand guidelines is really helpful for the long-term sustainability of your campaigns. And when it comes to voice, are you going to be formal or are you more casual? It's got to be appropriate to you and authentic. The best social voices are authentic. I wouldn't expect a funeral directors to be running Friday funnies and making jokes and making light. I'd expect them to be showing how warm and caring and professional and compassionate that they are. So think about how you are going to embody your brand, embody your business with every single social media post that you do. Remember that, being sociable, being a person, social media was designed for people to connect with people. So how are you going to think of your brand as a person? How's it going to behave? How's it going to talk? What does it look like? All of those things. And we do talk about this a lot more depth in our Writing for Social Media webinar. So as I say, do join us for that if you like. And this is one of my favorite campaigns. It's an ongoing campaign. It's called the This Girl Can campaign. And it's a really strong branded campaign. Huge on social media, really we almost had a very knowing tone. It really knew who its audience were. It was trying to showcase women in sport and trying to get more women to do the exercise that if they let themselves, they could go ahead to love. They used across social media platforms, but they had real strong design elements, and they even allowed people to create their own This Girl Can user-generated content by using their own brand elements. A fantastically successful campaign, and it is ongoing. So do check it out if you want to see more about a really good case study for that idea of social voice and knowing your audience. Now, step 5 is all about the numbers. And it's really about not getting distracted by the wrong numbers. This isn't about vanity. Remember back to that goal. What was your goal? If your goal was to sell some things, don't measure likes. You can't pay the mortgage with likes, okay? If your goal was engagement and reach, think about the people that those likes and shares are coming from. Are they being shared within the right communities? But think even deeper, as I say, selling of things how are you going to take yourself forward on that customer journey? How are you going to provide, if you have a how to fit a certain part video, lots of engagement with that video would show that, people are successfully learning about your business, about what you've got to say. So that might be a real good way to see how well that content is doing. Can you improve your customer service star ratings? Can you have a business goal? Might be to improve your the number of reviews you've got and testimonials. Gather that user-generated content. Gather those testimonials. It's not just about followers. It's not just about likes. Engagement is a lot deeper. What are they engaging with? What are people liking, and when are they liking it? And we've mentioned it a couple of times, but organic reach can only take you so far. The great thing about social media is if somebody's on that platform and you can identify their likes and dislikes and propensity, then you can find those audiences. If you've already got an audience, you can have a lookalike audience, and it's a highly measurable way of saying, right, this is what I was after. This is the audience I was going for. These are the results I got. So across platforms, and actually a lot of platforms make it quite difficult to gain reach without paying for it. If you're not paying, you'll only reach a subset of your followers with any particular piece of content, right? So especially if you've got a sales or a growth target, then consider paying for those actions, those engagements. So what we've been talking about so far, we've spoken about our 5-step plan, which is our audience, what we want to achieve as a business, then use those pieces of information to identify a social platform, or maybe 2, that we want to be active on. Think about what we want to say and how we want to say it and how we want to be portrayed, and make sure we are measuring it. It's not a straight line. We have to put it as a straight line. It's not even a circle. It's more like a big ball of string, you know. When you learn something about your audience, it will affect how you use your tone of voice. When you have a win on a particular social platform, it might go back and influence who your audience is. Who you thought your audience were might be different the more you learn, which is why it's really important to be data-driven as much as you can. Okie dokie, we're rattling through our time today. I can see that we are getting some great questions coming in, and Tessa is keeping an eye on answering those. So that's great. I'm going to jump in to those, a few tools for you and a few best practices. Brilliant. Okay, so what kind of content? All right, we've spoken a little bit about content. Content are the things that you say, all right? And there's different kinds of content. And actually, what really helps, because you could say anything, actually thinking up things to say can be quite difficult. A lot of people think that the hardest part of social media is actually thinking up things to say. So people love a glimpse of behind the scenes. So you can start with some announcements. You know, you might have new product announcements. You might have cake of the week, or you might have a special offer going on, whatever it is. Okay, so you might have some announcements going on. But we don't always have announcements to make. So thinking about an announcement, we don't just have to have on that one day and then it's gone. Think about how you're going to build up to that announcement, something exciting coming at, you know, noon tomorrow, and start thinking about building up some excitement before the announcement. And maybe how are you going to keep the buzz of that announcement? You might go live to make the announcement, but if people don't see that, how else are you going to repurpose that content? You might spend some time going behind the scenes, giving some insights, introducing some of the people who work for your business. That could lead into these kind of product and brand related, those tips for using your product. Why not get the person who's worked in your business, is the wonderful craftsman who makes all these wonderful things, showcase what they're up to. You might have some recurring content. Think of breaking down, use a calendar and break down the year. How are you going to build up to Christmas? How are you going to build up to Halloween? How are you going to build up to the summer holidays? How are you going to build up all of these different phases of the year? You know, we've just had one bank holiday. We've got another bank holiday coming. We've got another one coming after that. Then we're going into summer. Realistically, if I wanted to do something for the coronation, today is probably my last chance to start getting things organized for it. So if you do want to make the most of this long bank holiday weekend coming up, start thinking now about really pulling together and getting some things out there. Okay, but then think about trying to get yourself a little bit ahead. You know, I always work 3 months out with an overall shape. I work 2 months out with thinking about the kinds of content I'm going to place. And then I want to be locked in really for the next 4 weeks. And I do that on a weekly basis. So adding a week, but instead of adding this week each time, I'm adding a week in 4 weeks' time. Don't post the same content across all channels, and don't repeat content again and again. You can repurpose it, but try and say it in a slightly different way. Don't just copy and paste. Okay. We've mentioned a little bit about the This Girl Can campaign and how they used user-generated content. It's a really great way to expand your network. So imagine on the example on screen is fantastic. It's a beautifully packaged delivery. It looks gorgeous. It comes with a little branded tag, and it comes in beautiful, maybe it's got a ribbon. Do you remember that scene in Love Actually where they tied the bag and they were putting all the flowers into it? People love sharing that sort of thing. So if you can encourage customers to share what, their experiences of you, that will help you tap into their networks. It also gives you some great content. And if you're going to ask for that, put your handles on your social media handles on the little business card that you put into the package when you send it, or take some great photos before and after and send them, tag the customers in potentially, in what you're talking about. Make it really what you're trying to do with the user generators is that the customer creates the content and you expand on that from there. Okay, so how can you encourage your audience to engage with your brand? How can you make that really authentic, really genuine, really relatable? Okay. In terms of content, there are loads of tools out there that will help you along your design journey. Something like a Canva, which will help you to improve your graphics, will help you add, you can make your own memes, you can add your brand elements and have a consistent style. Make sure you check your grammar. Lots of people will disengage from a post if the grammar is a little bit off. So make sure you are writing what you think you're writing. And, something like Grammarly can help you check all of your writing for grammar mistakes. Another great way to do it is if you manage your social media accounts. Remember I said I was thinking ahead and planning ahead all the time. What I'm actually doing is I'm using a scheduler. So rather than having to be active on that Sunday afternoon to make the post, what I'm actually doing is I'm sitting at a time and date to suit me and using a social media scheduler, something like Hootsuite, something like Sprout Social, that is allowing me to use a calendar function to plot when I'm going to post it and when. It makes it a lot easier to get on top of posting. We've all seen it where a business will post 5 times in one day and then nothing for 2 weeks. It's because they were doing it on their terms and their time. Whereas what I want you to see you doing is scheduling it out. All right, then, we're coming towards the end. So just a little bit of a recap of what we've got. Remember that it's really important that for your strategy, you have an idea of what you want to achieve as a business and you make sure your social media goals match up with them. Think about your tone of voice, think about the audience, and think about the kinds of content that you want to be posting. But make sure you are choosing those right platforms to focus upon. All right, and just check in with Tessa, and I can see, perfectly as always when you work with Tessa. Tessa has answered all those questions that we've had as we've gone through. So thank you for that, Tessa. Excellent. I try not to look at it, but I can see all the chat going through and out of the corner of my eye, and it looks like it's been really busy in there. So what I'd like you to do is just take a moment just before we finish and think about your next steps. It's good there's been a lot of information come at you. One of the next steps, you might want to rewatch the video. So using the link you used to get to me today, you can reuse that link and rewatch till about lunchtime tomorrow. So it will stay live for a little bit of time for you. Great idea is to post anything that you think, right, that's what I want. Let Tessa know. Let Tessa be your accountability buddy. Tell the universe and everybody else on the webinar today what it is that you are going to do differently. Maybe it's sign up for a scheduler. Maybe it's do a review of all your different social media platforms and see what you're doing. Your next step, if you're based here in the UK and you work for a small business or a startup or your kitchen table business, or if you work for a charity, then you can sign up for a free Google mentoring session. Head to g.co/UK mentoring, fill out the form, give us an idea of what you would like to talk about and some times that you're available. And one of our team will sit one-to-one with you via the magic of the internet and go into some of the more detail on the topics that you're wanting to hear about. So as I say, g.co/UK mentoring for that. And don't forget, you can also sign up for some more webinars. Digital marketing strategy and also writing for social media go really well with what we've been speaking about today. Other than that, thank you so much for all your questions. Thanks for all the interaction. Got to wrap up here, completely out of time again. Hope it's been a useful dive into social media strategy for you. If you're interested in learning more, do check us out on the website where you'll see everything we've got coming up. Other than that, thank you to Tessa for being fantastic as usual. Thank you to you for joining us. We look forward to welcoming you again to another Google Digital Garage training session sometime soon. Have a great day.